some reason my camera's not coming on, so I apologise about that, but never mind. Hopefully I can share my screen.
Well, I think you all know that the main purpose of this meeting is to update and make current the guidance in 12 fire critical assets that we put together, getting on for 2 years ago now, in much the same format as this, along with a lot of email conversations, side meetings, telephone conversations, Teams meetings, Zoom meetings. We got it all together, and obviously with the Fire Safety Act and the Building Safety Act, it changes the perspective somewhat. We had a good meeting yesterday where where a lot of new things actually were raised, which have now will be going into the new guidance. So the first thing, I'm going to hand over to George to just put things in perspective a bit, give you a bit of context to what we've been doing and where we are.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Yeah, so yeah, for those of you, I think a lot of people have been involved in BIM4Housing, but some people haven't. So I think it's probably just worth spending just a couple of minutes explaining what we've been doing. Essentially, BIM4Housing isn't really just about BIM and what people perceive to be BIM, which is 3D modeling. It's really about better information management. So what we wanted to do when we started this about 3 years ago was look at what information would be could make the job of people that are involved in development, design, construction, manufacturing, advisory, and operations easier. So we set up working groups, and these working groups now are very active. We've got we have 6 meetings a year for each of them. So that's 36 meetings a year we have, and in those we determine what information could make the jobs easier to flow information between the different processes, and they then determine what activities need to take place. And for example, we've got a data work stream that has produced standardized information requirements, which we can share with you. Classification and reusable libraries. The fire safety teams have been probably the most active, and the result of that is the 12 fire safety assets that we've been going through over the next couple of weeks. Sustainability is a big one, and also digital records. So there's a lot of activity going on around there. Everybody volunteering their knowledge. So just to put it in context, one of the challenges is that we've got lots of people that need information for different purposes. And the result of that is that often you've got different information, different levels of detail that needs to be presented in different ways. And one of the ways in which we're trying to look at that so that we can, eat this elephant is to look at what information is likely to change, likely to need to be updated, and therefore it's variable or indeed active in information, whereas fixed information or passive information is something that may be in a PDF that you can read. The other thing is the things like fire risk assessments and safety case reports. They're obviously very valuable, but they're only correct at a moment in time and somebody's opinion. Whereas what we need as well at the same time is something that's onward and live. So the safety management system is the important thing for housing associations. And obviously, when things change, risk assessments need to be rerun. And it's a matter of breaking out the things that might change, like fire stopping inspections, and importantly, being able to tie that back to an individual asset. So, for example, we've got lots of golden threads happening now, which is fantastic, but it needs to be tied back to an asset so that we've got some sort of history of that asset, so that when an inspection's done in Plan Radar or risk base or Hilti or CX, that information is always being recorded against an individual asset. The other thing is data sheets. We're getting information in O&Ms, which is great if you get the information, but the difficulty is the data itself isn't auditable. So here, for example, this manufacturer's got fire rating. Here we've got fire rating described differently, and here it's described differently again. So that's why we're trying to move towards a situation where we've got standardized information requirements. And this is an exercise that we started 2 years ago with Hacked to actually create standardized data templates. And the different social landlords came together to agree a set of information that is common across all of the different systems they use. So what we were doing here as part of this exercise was to come up with a standard set of information, which we could then map to Uniclass, IFC, and therefore also be able to have standardized naming for things. So, for example, an automatic opening vent, it may be called an AOV or a smoke vent by different people, but they're all the same thing, really. Overall, we identified 245 asset types, of which 71 were fire related, and overall 152 are safety related. So what it's doing, it's giving us the opportunity to focus in on the information that's really important. The other thing is, what data do we need about each of those items? So you might have heard of COBie. COBie comes in two elements, really. There's information that's common to any product type, whether it's a smoke vent, a fire door, or a collar, a fire collar, or a damper, rather. The thing that makes it different is what attributes it carries as well. And that's not so simple either, because there's the BIM attributes are being largely compiled for design purposes. But then there's information that's needed for cost management, for example, and for ETIM is one that merchants use. So it's a matter of really determining what information is needed. So in this case, this was from yesterday, the AOVs, you've got a series of attributes there, and most of those really aren't important for asset management. So part of the purpose of this exercise is to really identify what information really is important in terms of the asset owners. And if we can do that, it means that that information can be collected easily from supply chains. So this is building on work that we've been doing over the last couple of years under the Golden Thread Initiative, where we were asked to lead the Asset and Survey Information Group. So there was 10 working groups in the Golden Thread Initiative, and we've been doing the asset and survey information. So the question that we're asking of subject matter experts like you was, what data do we need? And invariably, the answer that we got was, it depends. It depends on where that door is going to be. What's it doing? How is it expected to perform? And it's not simple to find out what is required, because building regs themselves refer to 800 standards. So that's why we tried to focus on 250 asset types, and then we're drilling that down here to 12. So these are the 12 that we're working on over the next couple of weeks. We did AOVs yesterday, fire doors today. We've got fire dampers, I think, on Thursday, and a couple of others on Friday. And this is the guidance. So this is what the team came up with 18 months ago. A description of what a fire door is, and then putting it in the context of a particular risk. So in this case, we've got a fire breaking out in a kitchen, and then it's a matter of looking at what measures are in place to prevent that spreading, or prevent smoke spreading in particular. And to achieve that, this is what the regulator or the HSE briefed us, was to say, it's all very well having the fire door working perfectly, but unless the rest of the compartment's going to perform, then essentially the risk or the hazard hasn't been mitigated. And if the smoke does come out, then we need to look at things like smoke control and detection. So it's this system-led thinking that we're trying to encourage. So I'm pleased to see that there's people in this group that aren't just focused at fire doors. They're looking at things from a wider perspective, and that's what we're trying to achieve. So the guidance itself, which we're going to go through in detail in a minute, is initially, what risk does that particular asset type mitigate? And this is coming at it from the point of view of putting it into the safety case view. Also, what risk what do people do to a fire door to stop it from working? And that's a very useful thing to be able to pick up. The next question that we ask, which is the one that really we want to concentrate on today, is what information is actually needed to ensure that it performs as required. And also, that's from a construction point of view as well. What tasks are needed to do installation, inspection, and maintenance? And what levels of competence are needed to ensure that the right people are doing the work? And also, finally, how should any changes in the product actually be recorded? And as part of this exercise, we've also been had a work stream looking at the inspection procedures, so that we can actually standardize the way these inspections are being done. And there's a call out here really to people on here who are involved in fire doors to provide some input to that. And overall, what this means is that if we can get this information right, it means that we can hold information about a fire door as machine readable information that any software application can use. And therefore, it also means that the new things like BS 8644 or Fiery can then be applied in terms of information to that object throughout the whole scheme. So that's my piece. I'll hand back over to Richard now.
Okay, guys. Right. So, Jess, do you want to put the document up on the screen, please?
Yeah.
Right. We'll skim through all the early stuff and get to the meat and nitty gritty with the questions. Okay, so this is what risks does a fire door mitigate?
So can we take a couple of minutes just to read through those and see if there's anything that you think we've missed?
Brett, you got your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question. Oh, sorry, I was on mute.
I didn't catch that, mate. Could you start again?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. There's a quick question here. The first few points on there: risk of smoke buildup, risk of heat buildup, and risk of spread of smoke. How can it mitigate the risk of smoke buildup and the spread of smoke at the same time? A fire door definitely stops the spread of smoke, But by doing that, it contains the smoke in one area. So it's not mitigating the buildup of smoke. It's actually creating that buildup of smoke in one area and
in one
stopping.
area,
So
but
I would,
mitigating it in other areas.
yeah. So I would question the first bullet point there by saying it's mitigating the risk of spread of smoke, not the buildup.
Okay, we can remove that.
Yeah, could you? Yeah, take that out. I agree with that actually. Sorry, I should have said at the top. This meeting will be recorded. There'll be the video available. Also, we have high point notes done, and we look through the chat and we use the chat. So if you've got anything to say and you don't really want to talk in public, or sometimes I'll ask you to actually put it in the chat so we don't miss it. And you'll find that we actually, the document is dynamic, and just will add that in as we go along. So be aware to use the chat. Simon.
Yeah, hi guys. Just to counter that, could you not say that your first original point, you are mitigating the risk of smoke buildup because the fire door stopping the smoke building up the other side of the door?
Yeah, I think it's maybe not a question of deletion, it's clarification, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, who's I'm not seeing everybody's hands here. Alan.
Yes, I am very much aware that this is the first meeting I've attended of this group, and so I could be asking a really stupid question that's already been covered half a dozen times, but just picking up the point, risk of inhibiting safe exit from the building. I did look through the notes, the current words last night, and it seems that nearly all the words relate to internal fire resisting doors. But there doesn't appear to be anything at the moment on final exit doors or fire exit doors, some of which would be internal to evacuate some people from one building into another building internally, and that door would probably have fire resisting qualities. So I know I'm sort of, I'm opening up a big can of worms here, but I think there needs to be a section on final exit doors and fire exit doors, because clearly they need to be have a different specification. They need to be treated in a different way to internal fire resisting doors. But if we don't deal with them under fire doors, I'm just wondering, where do we deal with them?
No, that's a very good point, and you're the first person actually to bring that up, I think. But yeah, noted, Alan, and absolutely, we'll perhaps discuss that afterwards or something.
Right. Okay. Right. Thank you.
Laura.
Hi. My point is just in regards to bullet point 5. I think there needs to be a bit of clarity in how the fire door is preventing the spread of fire and products of combustion via cavities. To me, that's describing more of a cavity barrier rather than a fire door.
Extend on the walls along with other concealed. Have you got any suggestion on that, Laura?
I've been trying to think of one quickly, but no. But I just think we need. To me, that's more of a description of a cavity barrier. If we're talking about the concealed cavities, you would be putting a cavity barrier in. You wouldn't necessarily see fire doors within your cavities.
Does anybody else have a view on that?
I completely agree with that. To be fair, the cavity should be it's a separate issue.
Okay, Laura, would you like to take that away and give us just an edited sentence? You don't need to do it today.
No, that's fine.
If you want to do that. The whole point about this, we're not going to get through all of this today, by the way. And what we did yesterday, we had a dozen or so people who volunteered to continue the work because they saw value in what we're trying to achieve. So if you're interested in contributing to this, if you could put your name in the chat, then we can follow up with you know, some more, because obviously we're all volunteers. It's a matter of just being able to spend an hour or so of your expert time just doing stuff, if you wouldn't mind doing that.
Ian, your hand was up.
Yeah, all I want to say is we need to be careful about going too far into this whole thing about what risks does it mitigate. In reality, everyone knows what a fire door does. Yeah, and we don't need to have every single thing that's included. So that's one thing. But the other thing as well, we shouldn't just consider fire doors here. We should consider fire strategy. And in fire strategy, and it's been mentioned, the escape route is important. So it's the escape route, doors leading onto the escape route, and then, yes, of course, the final exit. But we need to clarify that really, and I mean, we inspect doors. That's the mainstay of what I do, other than training. But so few people inspect the doors leading onto the escape route. Very few people actually look at it. And of course, clients aren't, educated is the wrong word, but perhaps not aware of the requirements. And to put it very bluntly, it's no good having 500 perfectly compliant fire doors if when you get to your final exit door, it's chained up or you can't open it because it hasn't been open for 20 years and it's seized up. So we need to make sure that we try and move the overall focus on the fire strategy, if that makes sense. And that's all it is.
I agree. I think part of the issue is that obviously people will look at things from a point of view of the individual asset, whereas I think, you know, I absolutely agree that we need to be looking at things at a system level and the building as a system, and that would be the fire strategy as well, wouldn't it, Ian? So
yes, it would, exactly.
But what I think we've got to do is provide some building blocks that people can work from. So it's a matter of coming from the ground up and also the top down. But yeah, good. Okay, shall we move on to the information, Richard?
Has anybody got anything else to add on to there, or put it in the chat? Okay, then we're going to move down to 1B. Right, this is what risks is a fire door itself susceptible to?
We added this in because it's a 1B, because on the previous sessions we got some really rich information back from in fact, could you take out that one there, that one that says smoke extraction, please, Jess, because that's in the wrong place. So the first point, the first bullet point, just take it out completely. I don't know how that's crept in. Okay. Yeah, so this is really sharing experience of obviously doors being painted over, for example, and the impact of that. So has anybody got any other suggestions that, or any contributions in terms of how a door can be made ineffective? Carry on, Ian.
Well, the first and most obvious thing is not being installed correctly. That's the biggest risk with a fire door. Yeah. And well, yeah, that's enough on that one. And then the second one is a lack of maintenance. And they're the two biggest risks.
I think if we all have a quick look down, what we've already got there would be helpful.
Yeah.
So has anybody got anything new to add in, or something they think should be taken out or amended?
I was just going to say, Richard, that I think apart from the material aspect of the fire door, the physical construction, the certification and stuff like that, I think during day-to-day use, I think an aspect that's probably forgotten a little bit is the connection of the fire door to cause and effect. So say it might be connected to, I don't know, a mag lock, or they might put a security device on, you know, a final exit fire door. It might be, say, in a mental health institute where you have high security, but you have say 60-minute fire doors as well. And in instances where the cause and effect isn't programmed properly, or say it isn't maintained properly, the electric locks might fix into position where the door should be opened on activation of the fire alarm. Sometimes it's fixed into position and therefore causing an entrapment situation. So I think in terms of the fire door being connected to other electrical or mechanical devices, I think there's something there that I think we just probably need to be a little bit aware of.
Absolutely. Do you want to pop that point in the chat so we can bear that in mind? Thank you.
Oh.
Sorry, Ian, you still got your hand up, or is that from before?
Ian McKilwee, I think.
I'm fiddling away in the type.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon.
Who else has got their hands up?
Yeah, I have. Can I just add to that comment as well? I think it's a great point. I think a lot of awareness is required where fire doors are installed, you walk away, then the building's responsible person or asset owner suddenly decides to add access control. I think there's a lot of information there that needs to be, from an education perspective, on what is access control, how that affects test evidence of doors, how it affects regulations for walking through a door, the heights of maglocks, if they're permitted. You know, you can't just install a fire door and walk away. If the client then suddenly takes on the responsibility to add access control retrospectively, it really needs. We're having some CPDs actually with Asser Adboy and Roy Buckingham and his team, because, you know, something we're acutely aware of. Whilst we don't install access control, we've got to make sure that clients are aware of what it is, and they, you know, when we hand a compliantly installed fire door over, they can't just suddenly then turn it into a door that's not as per test evidence specifically related to the access control if it needs access control. I think a lot more awareness needs to be made on that part. I think that's where a lot of buildings go wrong.
Thank you.
Again, could you pop that in the chat for us?
Yeah, I will do.
In addition to listing risks, would it be possible to list the interactions between mitigations? Because as the first commenter pointed out, if you stop smoke from moving around, then you actually increase the tendency for the smoke to build up in one place. So a mitigation can actually have some unintended consequences, maybe.
You want to put that into the chat or something like that,
Yeah.
Simon? Good. Okay. Shall we move on, Richard?
Yeah. Let's move through to question 2, Jessica. By question 2, we're going to go into a little bit more detail as per George's introduction, but we'll still try and get through. George, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the. Jess, can you open up the spreadsheet version?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find it.
George, would it before you do that, would it make sense just to whiz through this to see if anybody wants to add anything in?
Yes.
Might that make sense?
Yes.
All right, have a look through this. Question 2 is, what information is required about a fire door? Anything glaringly missing?
I mean, I think considering all of the all of the updates from the Hackett review and all of the emphasis on the golden thread and digitalization of the information, looking at the life cycle of the fire door, I think one thing that we really need to focus is on the new technology where these NFC chips are being inserted into the door. So actually, I mean, and I know for a fact most of the major manufacturers in the timber doors anyway, they do it. What it contains, sort of an ISP link. So it contains all of the information, from the manufacturing plant, the distribution, all of the doors. And also what you can do is that you can interface that chip within your own repairs and M&Es databases, so that you can look at the whole life cycle of the door, every repair that's been done on that door. So I think that's sort of technology we really need to make more use of in the future, to manage doors more responsibly. Yeah.
Absolutely, but the purpose of this exercise is to determine what information should actually be there. What do we actually need?
So that chip is in the door. So I think as specifiers, and if we're looking at fire doors, I mean, if you're asking for the door certificate, if you're asking for the door number, if you're asking for a door schedule, you should ask for that chip information as well. It's available on the internet, or it can be scanned on the door. Most of these doors come with a very small chip. You probably don't even know it's there. So I think it's responsible to ask for that information as, looking at storing that information through the golden thread.
There's no question. I absolutely agree that we should be including that. I think one of the challenges, though, is that what we've got that great information that's coming through from the manufacturer, but then when the door is inspected by somebody, they'll probably use a different software application to do the inspection.
Possibly.
And the same with maintenance. Yeah. So therefore, what we need to do is make sure that as you've said, the information that is available from the manufacturers they need to share it as an open protocol, which I must admit.
And it is. Yeah. I mean, most door manufacturers will just store this on the internet. They give you a link as as a client or an specifier, and obviously then you can download that information. It's open. It's up there for a year in most cases. That information.
That's great. I mean, certainly from the conversations that I've had, I mean, we've got a couple of. Is Jeremy? Jeremy, are you on the call?
Yeah.
Jeremy Mallet.
I am, George, yes.
From Shellan, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have that technology in your doors?
We've just started it. We don't use an NFC chip. We're using a QR code at the moment. Obviously, over time, we might use an NFC chip. We need to get that tested as well with a full door set.
And will you be making the information available to others?
We will, yes. So there will be, on the QR code, for instance, it will refer back to our main system and have that golden thread information about the door, the components, specification, etc.
Sorry, just to clarify that, what I'm saying is I appreciate that you'll be able to, the landlord or the maintenance people will be able to access your website to see the information. Yeah. But what I'm asking is whether that is going to be in a machine readable format that, for example, could be used in Civica CX or something like that. Because
and I think that's absolutely why I'm on this call, really, to be honest, George, is to understand that we actually develop it in the right way so it does become open protocol.
Good. Okay.
Elliot, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just excuse me, just to say that our NFC chip has been developed in that way. So whilst ever it is, it's an independent platform that other applications and other maintenance companies can access. If it did need to be data readable, it is stored in almost an Excel format. The one thing you can't do, obviously, to make data readable is have your field of application on there, which needs to be specific to the door itself or the range of doors that are in the building, because we do have from a manufacturing perspective, just because the door has one set restrictor on it or handle on it doesn't mean that it hasn't been tested with something else. So you can replace with like tested product. So it's really important that the field of application is on there. That's never going to be made public on a website, but it will be made available to the company that purchased the door, if that makes sense.
When you say the people that purchase the door, that would
so the end
include...
user, so the local authority or the whoever the property owner, the person the responsible person, as they now call them.
Yeah.
So and the generic information that that links back to substrates and the actual the major components of the door will be machine readable, but the field of application can't be due to the nature of the document.
Okay, I think I understand that.
Yeah, I was leaving it to you.
Yeah, so you can, so we break it down, sorry, just to clarify. So individual components will be like on a data spreadsheet, so size, cut, color will be machine readable, but because of the nuances of a Word document, which is the field of application, we have 100 different tests within one field of application, so you will not be able to have all the variances machine readable because there's 100 different permutations.
Okay, so thank you, Elliot. If we look through this, stop flashing backwards and forwards, Jess, it's going to confuse people, or me anyway. Could we go to the top of the list of the information just for the minute? Right, so the point is, I think the point that Elliot's made there is a good one, and in fact we identified this yesterday. The information that's coming through from the manufacturer is largely about the product, and in many cases it's about its dimensions and things like that, which is obviously important information. But if we could you scroll down a little bit, Jess? So things like, that's it, stop there. So the door closer type, and also the things, some of this information would be provided as, I would call, maybe will be provided on a PDF data sheet or something like that. But other information is likely to be specific to that particular install. So acoustic properties, for example, or U-value properties, I would imagine that that's pretty static. That would relate to the product, the fabricated product. But maybe could you scroll down a bit more, Jess? Yeah, so keep going, please. So the gap tolerances and things like that. Those, yeah, I guess those could also be, those would be useful to be machine readable, I would think, because that's something that could then be used in some sort of inspection side of things. So what we need...
Does anybody want to add anything else in?
Yes, sorry.
No, it's all right. But does anybody want to add anything else into that? Any glaring omissions or something you don't agree with? And then we can...
Sorry, guys. I must have read this document lots of times, but we're just jumping up and down. Have we got the substrate or wall construction that it's going into in there? Because that's really important.
That's the point I was about to make. Yeah, it's really important. The weight of the door is really important when you're looking at the wall construction.
And it's just to ensure that the door has been tested in that that substrate.
And one of the common issues we see, if the door weighs more than 60 kilos, how do you fit it into the wall? Because quite often you need additional steel to support the structural weight of the door, which means you've got to change the construction of your wall to accommodate it.
I'm pretty sure
about that to a construction site.
Right, what I suggest is put those 2 points into the chat.
And we can then pick them up.
Yeah, then we can pick them up afterwards. Simon.
Yeah, just a quick, if any manufacturers can educate me, what I don't understand is So we supply and install. We don't manufacture anything. We supply and install fire doors. We either get those primary assessed fire door sets or on a global assessment fire door assemblies. What I still don't understand is how can a builder's merchant sell a fire door where it's not lit, it doesn't have any seals in it? You know, we supply and install fire doors to exacting sizes depending on the structural opening it's going into to define specifications. So should there be some sort of guidance on, well, can someone educate me? How can you buy for less than £100 a fire door off the shelf and then suddenly turn that into a designed, engineers, tested fire door assembly you're going to install? It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand it.
You can't.
So why is that still allowed then, is my next question. Surely this should be outlawed. You know, you need to get a fire door, designed, tested, engineered fire door set made to specification and the right size, either under primary test evidence, which is a fire door set, or a fire door assembly, which is under global assessment, which is the door core is lit, it's got seals on it, and then you use the relevant pre-mortised ironmongery as per the global assessment. You can't get a local builder to get a door core.
Sorry, Simon,
Right,
are they selling internal? Are they selling internal doors or
You can
external?
go to builders. You can go to builders merchant and pick up a fire door for less than £100. How is that possible? You've got to lift it. You've got to route seals in it. You've got to get the right ironmonger in it. That doesn't make sense to me. Someone can educate me.
If I can just say, I mean, if you consider, fantastic point, Simon. I totally agree, and I think we need to be responsible. We need to be ethical, and obviously we need to follow regulations which states that doors should be primary tested in the first instance. If not, then we accept the field of application for global assessments. But I think if you look at hundreds of social housing blocks out there where there's antisocial behaviours, you know, the fire brigade will knock a door down. What we do allow is to have what you would class as a door blank. So imported, you know, sort of a door core. It could be sort of a sandwich door. It could be a timber door. You know, hopefully not composite doors, but a door that is designed to withstand, and that's just a core of the door itself. No ironmongery, nothing at all attached to it. That's probably got the 30-minute fire resistance, perhaps integrity signed to it. And then we would use that door as a temporary door to just block off the front entrance of the flat in the interim, in lieu of having a completely certified fire door set being installed. So I think in that situation,
the word is the word temporary. That's the key.
Absolutely.
People don't use it as a temporary. They use it as a permanent solution.
Yeah, unfortunately, that sort of thing hopefully is being I mean, stopped in the industry right now, because you know, if there were to be a fatality and injury, and regulator were to ask you, provide for us door certification and evidence that this door assembly was tested, resistance, integrity, and smoke, I don't think you'd be in a position to provide that, which, you know.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Very good point. But I do want to move on. Roy, have you got something you want to say that would involve either adding something into the list or moving us forward?
No, it was more in response to that comments made by Simon there, in that, you know, the UK market allows either fire door assemblies or it allows fire door sets. A fire door set comes from a single invoiceable source as a complete door set, door leaf, frame, ironmongery, all invoiced from a single supplier, whereas a door assembly is a door leaf procured from one source, a frame possibly procured from somewhere else, and hardware from somewhere else, and then assembled on site to create a fire door. There is a distinct difference between those, but both should achieve a fire compartmentation rating, providing they are installed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions that define the size parameters, the hardware parameters, and everything else that's installed. The problem we have in the UK is that we don't rely on, or we don't insist on, competence to install those solutions to be proven. Hopefully, with the introduction of BSI Flex and the competence standards coming through, that will change and drive that change to more competent people installing these solutions. But really, what it needs is regulation to drive that.
It's funny you should say that. If we get to question 4, that is all about competence. So let's try and get moving. Peter, you got your hand up. You got something?
Nothing more to add than that. I was basically going to say
great, then.
what's just been said, really.
Okay.
Cheers, then. Thanks.
Thank you.
Laura.
Hi, I was just going to say, actually, following on from all of that,
I
one
can't
of the
hear
key
you.
things that we are missing from this list is who actually installed that door. We would need a named individual so you can see who installed it and which company they're from. Because you've got the details from the manufacturer, but generally who's installed.
Yeah, we've got
an very different.
Just can you scroll down to the installation? That's it. There you go.
Yeah, including the name of the installer, Laura.
Yeah.
See there? Good.
Yeah,
okay.
Okay. Right. Okay. So I think unless has anybody got anything more to add? If not, then we can kind of move on to the second stage of this question too, because it's an important one. It's about the information after all. George, do you want to move on to your?
Yes. Okay. So this is the exercise. Let me just share my screen. This is the methodology that we started to move towards, that we'd like to build on, if you agree. This is something that's an international standard, RACI. I don't know if you're aware of it, but basically it's looking at each bit of information and seeing who's responsible for it, who's accountable, who needs to be consulted, and who just needs to be kept informed. So what we've tried to do here is to look at the various different stakeholders, whether it's the client or manufacturer or installer or commissioner, and look at to see where this fits. Now, we're not going to do this today, but if you agree with this approach, then if you put your name in the chat and you're willing to put an hour and a half aside, we're going to set up some sessions on fire doors to actually go through this. This is an exercise that we did do, so we've actually gone through quite a lot of work already, which you can then contribute to. The thing I was going to say today, though, is that the other thing that we were introducing now is whether something's active or passive. So what information could be delivered and probably is already being delivered, maybe in product data sheets that we can use, which of this information is something that we would like to have as machine readable information, so that we can then so software can interrogate it. People that are doing inspections can check the values, like the gap tolerances and things like that. And the thing that Ian was saying earlier in terms of the weight of the product as well, because having the weight as a machine readable value means that would be much easier to check. So I'm just showing you this to say, if you're interested in what the outcome of this would be, then put your name in the chat and we can then come back to you and you can get involved. Okay, that was it, Richard.
Okay, great. So I think we've finished with question 2 as far as we can do, aren't we? Until we do these additional meetings. So let's move on to question 3, Jess. There we go. What tasks or procedures are required to ensure a fire door is installed, commissioned, inspected, and maintained properly? So let's start with specification. And installation.
Again,
flick through those.
Again, if we could scroll up just for a second there, see those things like the gap tolerances and things like that. If that information can be made available as machine readable information, then that would be useful. Sorry, I've just realised I asked Jeremy Mallet to provide a couple of his data sheets just so that we could illustrate that.
Okay. Yeah.
Jeremy, is that something you want to share, or should I? You want to pull that up, or do you want me to?
You're welcome to, George. I did send them to you yesterday.
Yeah.
Obviously, if there's any questions, I'll take them and maybe respond accordingly after the call or something, if there are any.
Yeah. So if I start first of all with the product specification, and if there are any other manufacturers on the call, then I'd be very keen to have your contribution to this. But this is what Jeremy's company issues. So you've got there some fairly detailed specification information there, the certification, and those standards. And here we've got how the product performs. So, I mean, ideally, this information should be in a machine readable format, but I think we're on a journey. And therefore, as long as we can at least get this information for each door that's been installed, I think the asset teams would find that useful. Is there anybody on the call from asset management who could this is the certificate of conformity. So I think these are called essential characteristics. So these are the things that really should be in a machine readable form. So of all the hundreds of properties that you'd want, Jeremy, do you know if these are common to all door types or all doors? Or does anybody else on the call know?
They're pretty common. I mean, we have there might be certain differentiations depending on the range of the doors that we provide and install.
Yeah.
And is the terminology the same? Do they call it? Does everybody call it the same thing?
Do you know, Elliot?
I would say it's certainly not standardized. And if you wanted to put this in, you'd have to list every single product that your door had been tested with, because we offer 4 or 5 different closers, different hardware, different lock types. So you couldn't, to standardize it would be quite hard.
In fact, well, you could only do that in a machine readable format, couldn't you? You couldn't do it on paper.
Sorry, could I just ask? I thought this was part of what are called harmonized standards, but maybe I'm wrong. I thought
that's a declaration of performance, isn't it? But the declaration of performance doesn't cover fire; it only covers other elements of the performance. So for those elements, it is covered. It is standardised. It's for fire. It isn't yet.
Yeah, so the fire aspects are. I see what you mean. So yes, is that where?
If you took an external door, for example, an external fire door could be CE marked for its thermal properties,
yes,
but not for its fire properties.
Yeah. Okay. So Ian, would you say that for a door? So this is really for any door. That's what we're saying, is it? Whether it's acting as a fire door or not? Is that?
Yeah. So the essential character, the mechanism by which those need to be described is enshrined in the European standard as per that.
But it would vary according to how it's being, what it's being tested.
So that would then depend. So that would then be how you bring that product to market. Whether you have like a universal declaration of performance, or whether you have an individual one for every product that you sell.
Okay. So broadly, would it be useful for this information to be to be machine readable, or does that not really help?
The GAI and BWF and a few others have produced the PDT now, haven't they? Which I've put a link to in the chat. I haven't had time. I literally only found out about it at the back end of last week, so I haven't had time to cross-reference it. But again, my assumption is a lot of this stuff will be entwined in there. Anyway.
Okay.
Okay. Let's. Can we get back to the question 3? Ian,
course.
you've got your hand up. Ian Kavanagh.
Yeah, if we can go back to the heading that was on that shit on question 3. Chase, if you can just pull it up. The green text.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to be careful about well, it says probably third party accredited. This is one of my bugbears. I'm yet to see a compliant third party certified installation ever. So we need to be very careful about giving it, what's the word? Automatic approval.
Yeah.
It's not the be all and end all.
If you want to make an edit to that, maybe offline. So we discussed this before, Ian. I know that. Yeah. And then we can.
No problem. I'll do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Rennie.
Right, thank you. So sorry, maybe I'm getting confused a little bit, but I think it's really important to establish and demarcate the door, sourcing the door, the procurement of the door, and then you have the installation of the door, commissioning and installation. But then also when the door's already been installed, then the third phase now is really important, and I thought that's what we were talking about, is the inspection and the maintenance of that asset.
Sorry, so, if you look at, we start on the specification of the door.
Right.
We go to the installation of the door. Go down, just inspection. Carry on, just.
You've got the same headings for every single topic, isn't it? But really, I mean, for me. Maintenance, that's it. So when the door's already been installed, you have the specification, you have the certificate of conformity, you have the primary test data, you have the field of application, you have the third party accredited information, you have the blue mark, or whether it's BM or whether it's FIRAS, you have all of these documents. So you have that, you've stored that in your database because your door is already installed. So you have all of these documents. I think what's important now for us to look at the second phase is how do you inspect that door, most importantly, because that's the point at which the door fails. A fantastic 60-minute fire door with all the ironmongery that's listed on the field of application, perfectly installed, and by responsible installers, but then it's not inspected and it's not maintained. So what is the information that you need for that stage?
Well,
I think that's the question.
Can I make just 2 points on that? The first point is you've got all that information, it's all perfect if it's a new installation. If it's existing, you haven't, and most of the property is existing. That's the point.
That's the case, unfortunately.
The second point is what you're saying about the inspections. We've actually been running a number of workshops with Alan Oliver, who wrote a standardised inspection regime for the NHS. And he's currently putting one together in conjunction with a number of our people, our experts, for housing, residential, and that's being done as we speak.
Right.
So believe me, we're on that.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you want to sit in on that or get involved in that, you'd be more than welcome.
Yeah. We can do. My closing point, what I was just going to make is that I think in that form that you had, George, the information that I think would be important to have is from door manufacturers. What do you need if that door breaks? What are the authorized ironmongery that you're allowed based on the manufacturer's instructions and the field of application report? Are you allowed to put a dormer door closer? Is it CE mark? So that is the list that you need from manufacturers. If the door is damaged, how many microns of paint? Is it lead based? What are you allowed to do to maintain that door? If the door is exposed to a weather, say for instance it's on an open deck balcony, so it is a fire door, what is the maintenance regime? That sort of information I think is really important during the inspection and the maintenance phase that I think is really lacking and you know, landlords are just left sort of in the lurch because they don't have access to that sort of information, and in a lot of situations the warranty is breached because of that. So I think that
I fully agree.
Yeah.
The question is, how do we get that information? The view is it'll all be in the O&M, but we know that it won't unless we specify it, unless we say what we need, then we won't. And it's also then a matter of making it attractive and simple for the door manufacturers to provide that information.
Absolutely.
Elliot, you're my go-to person on this. How would you be able to satisfy what Rainey has just asked?
In regards, sorry, I was distracted.
I apologise. Sorry.
So, with regards, what? Sorry.
Yeah,
what were you asking, Rainey?
Do you want to just repeat
the maintenance,
it quickly?
the maintenance regime, when a door's been installed, normally the manufacturer will just say, okay, you know, we advise that you know, you maintain and you upkeep your door, but it doesn't actually give you a list of authorized products that you are allowed to change. For instance, Gerda may provide certain types of ironmongery, door closers, spy holes, letterboxes. Say, for instance, the paint was destroyed, they're not going to send it back to your manufacturing plant. So therefore, if you provide a maintenance regime, something that compliance department can then take into account and say, for instance, you know, you're allowed 1.5 microns of this type of paint, it allows for the door to be maintained and the life cycle of the door, you know, to be kept, and the integrity of the door to perform in case there was a fire later on. So
yeah,
is that sort of information
that would all be held within the field of application. So with your NFC chip that's in your door, you would have a link to that, and it would literally show you all the component parts that are allowed to be put onto that door. And that goes back to the point I made earlier about making it really hard for it all to be data readable, because you've got so many variables that you could put on a tested door set. With regards paint, we're composite, so you would tend to find that you wouldn't respray if the door fades. It will be within warranty. It's almost a lifetime guarantee. So that's less, because paint, water-based paint, doesn't make a difference. It's not an exhilarant, so it won't be fire rated as such. But yeah, everything is in the field of application, so it refers back to, there's no desktop studies anymore. It is, this door has been tested with this product, so that's what it can be replaced with. So for Roy's example, we've got different closers that can be put on our door. So you could go on there, look at the closers if the closer's been damaged, and as long as there is no external damage to the door as a result of it being taken off, then it can be replaced with a product that is tested.
How widely, sorry, just jump in, just how widely is what you're doing being done by other people, Elliot?
I can't speak for everybody, but we use a generic system provider, which is an independent team, and the more people that sign up with them, this data is available. So anybody that uses an NFC chip or QR code, I would think, would have that data accessible to the responsible person in some way, shape or form to allow maintenance of that product.
Yeah, can I just clarify? This is really important. Would that external provider, are they making that information machinery available to somebody that maybe is using Alex Oldham's Civica system?
Yeah, the only way we'll be able to do that is to deconstruct a Word document and put it into machine readable format. It's not at the moment, it's a Word document, so therefore it's not machine readable really. But it could be made machine readable, yeah.
But we could get the I've gone too far there by asking for it to be machine readable. If are you saying that's available to be downloaded by the end client?
A CV format, a CV file format, batch files, anything. I mean, it's quite easy, I think, that sort of thing too. Yeah.
Well, it's a Word document and it's a controlled document, therefore you're not able to touch or open or do anything with it. So from a machine readable format, it's not, because it is a PDF or a Word document, and you have to go to the pertinent place.
Yeah. So when Rainey, as a landlord,
What?
would they be able to download it as
No.
Okay. So well,
they
really,
could view it. They could view it, but they couldn't download. It's a controlled document. We can, so fabricators can have it. I would have to speak to our technical team to look at exactly how they could, but it is a controlled document. They're not allowed to edit it or touch it in any way, shape, or form.
So actually, for Rainey's purposes, it probably isn't usable then.
Well, it is, because if you've got damage to product number 1, Rainey Towers, they go in and they look at that door, and then they can go, right, so our door closer's damaged. What door closers? You go to the door closer section and it will give you 4 products that you can replace it with, but it's just not machine readable. You couldn't type in door closers and it go to it. You'd have to manually search the document to find it, but you could find
that's
it.
the key. I think
Okay,
obviously
we need to move on now. We do really need to move on. Pencho, you've had your hand up. Did you want something to quick comment on something?
Yeah. If you can just go back to the specifications, I think the specifications is a very important part of it. And I just see, I mean, in terms of the gaps, this is just specific requirements for the gaps, tolerances. But in terms of the specifications, I think it should be more comprehensive specification. It should say out what is to what standard the fire door should comply to in regards to fire, security, this kind of aspects. Even the installation, you can instead of referring to the door gaps, which are specific item, you can just refer back to manufacturer instructions in terms of door gaps, etc. Also, to be installed in line with BS 8214, the specific standards. And also,
Pencho, could you do me a favour and put that in the chat?
Yep, I can do that. And also, it's the important thing here. I mean, this part is important to set out exactly what you previously taught about the door assembly. So doors to be installed either as a door set or door assembly. You can decide up to this. I mean, this stage, you can actually decide that.
Yeah.
You can specify whether or not you want the primary test data, no matter where we're installing the primary test doors or door assembly. We can get that information from the door manufacturer in most cases with the NDAs. What about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, please put that in the chat for me so we don't lose it.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Simon and Ian have got their hands up as well.
I'm just trying to come to them. Ian.
Ian just Rain's discussion earlier about components and what have you in the door. Again, we shouldn't lose sight of this information should automatically be provided to comply with Regulation 38. And we can't escape that. That should already be there. That's nothing new. And clients need to be aware of their, of the main contractor's responsibilities to comply with Regulation 38. All the information should be automatically provided. It's nothing new.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Simon, briefly.
Yeah, just briefly. Sorry. My personal opinion is I think the whole world of the maintenance of existing fire doors is very murky and needs a whole separate conversation. Specifically, when a fire door is a client declared fire door and doesn't have any stamps on it, there's no manufacturer's evidence that, the maintenance works great on a fire door if there's test evidence because it's stamped, it has an owner manual, and you can see what component parts you can use to change and replace. It's speaking from someone that surveys, installs, maintains fire doors. I'd say something like 70 or 80% of the doors that we survey and maintain don't have stamps on them. They're client declared to us. So we're seeing bastardized things done to upgrade a random timber door into a fire door. Yeah. It's a very grey, murky world out there, and it needs a whole separate conversation on a standardized set of rules, crib sheets on what to do and what you can't do to maintain an existing fire door that is not a stamped, labelled fire door, but the client has declared it as such. Because
some of that, some of that is covered in the work that Alan Oliver's doing, not possibly to the extent that you're talking about, but I think that's a separate conversation now. But certainly, it's one that needs to be had.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so has anybody got anything that needs to be added into that question 3, other than what you've already given us? I'll take that as a no, and I'm going to move on to question 4. Right, here we go. What level of competency training needs to be in place? This was a fun one to write, I can tell you. Okay, let's scroll down just right. So we've got installation. There we go. Yeah, just stop at installation, just don't give me half of it. There we go. Obviously, competency of installers, third-party accreditations. Yeah. Have a quick look at that. Okay, who wants to add into there? Former Q. Ian.
Well, we've ignored City and Guilds qualified joiners in the various statements there. That's a start. I don't see that. Yeah, I don't see that supervisors need to have a level 3 NVQ diploma in wood occupations at all. Supervisors just need to be good at their job. And I think it's somewhat restrictive to suggest that a supervisor themselves should be qualified, personally.
Okay, well, put those points in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah. And the first point we can take aboard, the second point we can mull around and ask some people about, see what a general consensus is. Has anybody else got any thoughts on what Alan said about supervisors not requiring NVQ diploma?
I think they absolutely do. Absolutely. I mean, that's, you know, I mean, the door's only as strong as how well it's installed. And you have, in the BM4 scheme, for instance, you have a supervisor being trained up to deliver that training onto a team of, say, for instance, I've seen it been delivered to a garage full of 20 chippies. So really, you have to have that level of accountability, and I think it's absolutely a step backward if we remove that sort of that competency, that training, that qualification, and that accountability for that one main person that's delivering the work of that team. Don't forget, they're the ones doing QAs and responsible for sign-offs and stuff like that. So I'm sorry, but I disagree with that.
Okay, let me bring in Alan.
Sorry, can I interrupt? Can I interrupt? This is important. Rain, I'm yet to see a third-party certified compliant installation ever. And I look at a lot of installations. Third-party certification is projected as being the be-all and end-all, and it really is not. One person cannot supervise 20 installers. They cannot physically do it. And if there's any installers, Simon West, I'm sure Simon will agree, one person cannot oversee 20 people. What we need is qualified installers at a personal level. That's what we need.
I want to bring in Alan Oliver, because I know he'll have a view on this.
Yeah,
Alan.
I mean, I don't disagree with everything Ian's saying, but the idea that he's never seen a compliant third-party accredited installation is really, really concerning for me, Ian, because by implication, what you're saying is that there's no such thing, and that's certainly not the case. You know, I'm not aware
it's my
that you've
experience,
ever.
though.
I know, yeah, I get that, Ian, but I'm not aware you've ever seen any of our installations. And without blowing my trumpet, my company, you know, I'm very, very proud of the fact that we do deliver fire compliant installations, and you know, we work in very tough regimes. We work in hospital trusts where we're under a great deal of scrutiny. We do get adequately and robustly inspected by BRE LPCB. I do agree with Ian that third-party certification and accreditation clearly isn't the full story.
It's not enough alone.
And I am aware that there are some third-party accreditation schemes that are not fit for purpose. That's my personal opinion. So I totally agree with you.
It seems to be more about the competency of the accreditation, the quality of the accreditation, doesn't it? Right, Laura Smith.
I was just going to say, obviously, we're using the word supervisors here.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh.
Sorry, I was just about to say, we're using the word supervisors here. Would it not sort of be better to sort of break it down to sort of say, like, if you're actually physically installing a fire door, we would expect you to meet these competencies. If you're overseeing or signing off the work of an installer, we would expect you to be able to demonstrate these competencies. Because I appreciate there's people who supervise others, but then there'll be people that are like signing the work off. And I think we need to be clear who we're intending needs to meet which competencies.
Okay, could you put that in the chat for me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Simon.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much most points here. So we are a third-party accredited surveyor, installer, maintainer. All our surveyors do have MVQ, and we've had most of them from apprentices all the way up to where they are now. Most of them senior guys. I would like to think that they have a very decent level of knowledge in terms of how to install a fire door. But I would also argue that perhaps, their role as a supervisor is to make sure that things are done compliantly rather than have actually physically installed a door in the past. We just happen to have installers that are previous installers as well and now supervisors. But yeah, I do agree that some third-party schemes are particularly flawed. How you can have.
Ian, briefly.
Sorry,
okay.
No, not me.
Mistake. Okay, no worries. Right, let's continue. So we'll scroll down through installation, Jess. Right, so that's the maintenance which we've touched on. Anybody think there should be anything that needs to be added into there, or anything clarified? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no.
The work, the maintenance work should be also in part with manufacturing installation instructions, and also BS 8214 again. Anything that deals with installation.
Sorry, say that again.
BS 8214.
Right.
In regards to installation, if you can add that, because it's a good kind of standard for
Again, could you put that in the chat for me?
Okay.
Yeah, with a sentence that explains the context of it, so that we can interpret that properly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also. Sorry, I was just going to say. One line for regulations, because before I think maintenance was sort of an objective thing. Okay, well, I'll do it as reasonably practicable, but now I think the law is quite clear how often you have to inspect communal doors, front entrance doors, every 6 months, every 1 year, every 12 months. So I think it's quite important to specify in the maintenance adherence to regulation, not only British standard, but also statute, which now requires us to maintain within certain time frames and stuff.
Yeah, Randy, could you put that in the chat for me?
Yeah, sure.
Richard, I raised this earlier because I'm not sure this document's starting to work a little bit too hard, maybe. But one of the things I think that is quite important is to ensure that whoever installs it does have some kind of interaction with whoever's preparing the door opening. Because again, the door installer is not necessarily preparing the opening, and the opening needs to be compliant for the door to be compliant, and that's something we've got to factor in.
I think that's a really good point. Again, would you mind putting that into the chat, please, Ian?
Okay, just do you want to move down to question 5? How should product changes be recorded? Any thoughts on that? Just skim through those, just.
The context of this is quite interesting because it's really coming in from the fact that now the gateways are requiring design to be complete before construction starts, which is a novel idea. But it seems to be starting to gain traction. So the change management process of going from a specification to the actual product is something that there's a lot more interest in, and we've started having conversations with MBS Source or MBS, who produce the specification applications, to see how we can glue together a specification with the product data. So anyway.
Yeah, have a look through those. Do you want to just scroll down and give us another screen, Jess? These are this question became kind of, I wouldn't say open-ended, but it not so structured. All right, stop there, Jess.
So I think the important thing here, in general, is that if you think that what we've got in this information is useful, I mean, hopefully you do, because there's a lot of people like you with subject matter expertise that have contributed to it. What we need to do is figure out a way that we can turn this into something that people can consume, because otherwise it's just an overwhelming amount of information. So if you're interested in joining us on that, as I say, putting a couple of hours in to work on this, if you could put your names in the chat, the sorts of things that we're thinking is that there's broadly 3 areas. There's people that are interested in the data. So how can we take this and make it in a form that we can then interpret? So machine readable information, for example. So if you could put against your name that you're interested in data. Others, you might be interested in process. And I'm trying to think, what was the other one that we came up with? Application. Yeah. So if you're interested in particular in any of those 3, and you're willing to make some sort of time contribution, maybe with a 1 or 2 more meetings, then we'd be obviously keen to get your input. Also, if you know of main contractors, because obviously this is going to be driven to some extent through procurement, we want to engage with design managers and people that are responsible for maybe appointing works. So if you've got people that you could introduce us to, who we can bring into this conversation, that would be very useful as well. Most of the tier 1 contractors are part of BIM4Housing, but at the end of the day, it comes down to who the individuals are. So if Harry Jones is somebody that actually is appointing you on projects, either for doing refurbishment work or whatever, then, and you want to influence how they're thinking, then let us know.
Absolutely. Anybody got any thoughts on that, on this question about how we can actually make it do the effective change management? Yeah, sorry, it's a lot to read, isn't it?
I mean, hopefully we've covered.
Yeah, that would be
most
nice.
Things.
Yeah, Well, it's been surprising though, George, hasn't it? I mean, some of the asset types last time we actually had 2 round tables on, as I say, plus a lot of other much more was done actually outside of those, and we thought we got everything nailed. But as yesterday and today, just it's quite astonishing how much extra input we've had that we can action on.
Okay. Could I just ask, obviously, thank you very much for investing, the last hour and a half of your time on this. Do you feel that what we're doing here is useful? Thank you, Alan.
I think what we're doing here is essential, George, because I think we've already discussed today the fact that it's a real jungle out there. There's people who are doing training schemes claiming that within 8 hours they can make people competent to install a door, inspect a door, and sign off, maintain a door, and sign off a door. Which is absolutely ludicrous. And we can't control or educate the whole jungle, but if we just focus on getting the right information and getting it out to the key people within the housing sector, we'll be doing the industry a massive favour.
Thank you, Alan. Laura, as a landlord, because you work for Gentoo, don't you?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Yeah. Is this sort of information useful for you?
Yeah, I think aside from just myself, I think there's a lot of housing associations who are a lot smaller than we are, and I think it'd be very beneficial to them, as well as you've got housing associations that manage properties on a day-to-day basis for other companies. It'll be helpful for them. I think we've just got to get it into a format that people would understand as well outside of our industry, because at the moment I think they would get quite confused.
Good. Okay.
Okay. So unless anybody has anything pressing they'd like to add, we can actually finish 2 minutes early.
And have you put your names in the chat for follow-up?
Have you put your names in the chat? In which case, we'll see you again soon. I'm sure some of you will be in the other roundtables we're having over the next couple of weeks, so we'll see you there again then. Other than that, if you're in the chat, we'll see you fairly shortly. Once these are over, we'll get that sorted out.
Fantastic.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks.
Thanks.